You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920, The Jersey.
All right, welcome back into the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios. This is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920, The Jersey. We get you ready for Game 6 tonight. Rangers in a 3-2 hole, look to win Game 6, and then Game 7 would be on Thursday. A lot of action going on right now with the Stanley Cup playoffs. 2 Game 7s tomorrow, and Nashville is already through. So now joining us is a Sirius XM analyst for NHL Network Radio, and that's Russ Cohen, who's kind enough to hop on board with us right now. Russ, appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and how are you on this Tuesday?
Doing good, Zach. How about you?
Can't complain. Doing great myself, getting ready for this big game tonight. But before we talk about the game tonight, let's recap Game 5. Another one where it looks like the Rangers were the better team, but they let a goal in late, and then they lose in the overtime period. The head coach, Alain Vigneault, has been getting a lot of criticism for not playing Brady Shea in the final 5 minutes. Any defense for the coaching job of Alain Vigneault?
No defense at all because, Brady Shea has been great. He's one of their top point guys. He's been playing really solid defense, strong physically, strong skater. He's always been strong at getting the puck out of the zone. Why isn't he out there? Why is Tanner Glass out there last 5 minutes? These are coaching decisions that a coach that really only trusts veterans makes. And now he's sort of sitting behind that and saying, well, he's going with the veterans. Well, we've seen this team lose with the veterans too. And when you have youngsters that could actually contribute, you should think about using them and using them in big situations because you'll never know if they can do it unless you try.
I understand if he doesn't put Shea on the ice one time, like in the Montreal series. Yeah. I could get that because it's early on in the postseason. But then you see it again in Game 2 against Ottawa, and then you see it again in Game 5. It makes you wonder, what is it going to take for him to put Shea on the ice in the final 5 minutes, because he's their second best defenseman right now behind Ryan McDonough. If there's a situation tonight with how fresh it is off of Game 5, and let's say it's a 1-goal game with 5 minutes to go, do you think Shea's on the ice, or is this going to be the same old stubborn Alain Vigneault with dealing with the veterans?
Same old stubborn Alain Vigneault. We've seen it. I personally witnessed them losing Game 7 to Tampa. They didn't do much to adjust in that game. They haven't done much to adjust in this series. It's an odd situation because I think Vigneault has turned the Rangers a little bit into a Jekyll and Hyde team. They could look really good at times, and they could dominate a game and still lose, like you said. It's hard to do that, but they're pulling it off. Now, they're at home. They've been better at home lately. That's good. Lundqvist is their rock. That's a big plus. Everything else is sort of askew. Their big guys aren't scoring. When you're talking about Kevin Hayes, doesn't even have a goal, has 3 points. JT Miller, 3 points. Young guys don't have it. But then you look up top, the guy's getting insane amount of ice time. Like Stepan leads all their skaters over 21 minutes of ice time. He's got 6 points. Why is he even still on the power play? Michael Grabner's been one of their best players all year. Can't even sniff the power play. Jesper Fast has been great. He's actually one of their top scorers because he's got more points than Rick Nash. We all want to say Rick Nash plays a great game and he's physical and he plays great defense. Great. Still needs to score, too.
I think Nash has done a nice job in this postseason, but I'll agree with you with Hayes and Stepan. They're basically irrelevant right now for this team. Yep. And I know Hayes gets an assist, but really with this team, you see Stepan, and there's a big story about him telling Lundqvist to calm down. You know what? Yeah. I don't think that's a bright decision by Stepan. I know they're close friends, and they've been together for a long time in New York. But how about you put a puck past the goaltender before you tell Hank to just shut up, basically?
Yeah, I agree. I've watched Lundqvist his entire career, and he'll defend any one of his teammates, but I think his rope is getting a little short. I think he's getting a little tired of just comments like that and just play on the ice. It's nice when the Rangers veterans say, hey, we have to step up. Hey, we got to play big tonight. All those things are great, but then you have to do it. You actually have to do it. And Lundqvist deserves that more than anybody because he stepped up 99% of the time when he's had to. Has he been perfect this series? No. But there's no goalie right now that's perfect in the playoffs. So he's as good as anybody out there, but he's had very little support, and I would tell you the defense in front of him is probably the worst he's ever seen in the playoffs in his career.
It is, and that's very ironic just because of what this Rangers team that's been on these long runs before, they really been based off that foundation of Hank, which they still are, but also a good defense. And this defense has been sloppy at times. We're talking to Russ Cohen, who's a Sirius XM analyst for NHL Network Radio. Getting back to the late game scenarios, and I like Alain Vigneault, but like I said, there's no defense here of this situation with not having Shea on the ice. When you move past the personnel that's on the ice, how much is it that this thought of being able to close out a game, especially when you're on the road in the final minutes, is just in the Rangers' heads compared to the personnel that they're putting on the ice?
I think it's a little bit. How many decisive guys, scorers, shooters do they have with the game on the line? I see a lot of passing going on. I see a lot of guys that don't seem to want to take that shot that could possibly win the game, and so they give it to the next guy to try and get that perfect goal, the tap-in goal. It's not going to happen. It's not happening in these playoffs. You have to shoot the puck. And I see some guys shooting but just not taking their best shot. You know, how often do we see Rick Nash shoot a one-timer anymore? It's rare. He's got a great one, but it's rare. And the other problem is a lot of the young players, as the game moves on, they are afraid to make mistakes because they know they have a coach that will either bench them or not play them an entire period if they make a mistake. And that's tough on younger players. It is.
What do you think of the play of Jimmy Vesey so far in the playoffs?
It's been great. I mean, Jimmy Vesey is a greasy hockey player. He's never going to be a 70-point guy, but he certainly can be a 45 to 55-point guy in the NHL because he's willing to go to the net. He's willing to go to the tough areas. He works hard off the walls. He never takes a shift off. He has been a real spark plug for them. And again, he's not been getting commensurate ice time for his performance.
And I'll tell you, when he scored that goal to take the lead late in the third period with about 7-8 minutes to go, it kind of just felt like finally he scored, because you're right. He's been playing a really exceptional playoff, and he deserved that goal. And it's a shame that they weren't able to hang on.
No, it was a shame. And hard work has been paying off for him. And he could come up big in this game. But it's hard to believe that we are talking about maybe having a first-year guy come up big in a must-win game rather than one of their veterans. But I have to tell you, if these veterans don't come through, I would expect some big changes.
Now, with the confidence of this team, we know the Rangers have been there before, and they've been with their backs against the walls, having to win game 6 or 7. You could throw it out, though, tonight. It really means nothing to me. Right. It's nice to have that experience, but if you don't win the game tonight, no one's going to be talking about the experience of this team. That's just the reality of this situation. But we've seen in this series, the Rangers go up early in all these games, but at home, they're able to get that third and fourth goal. On the road, they're not. What type of team do you expect the Rangers to be tonight in this Game 6?
I think they're going to press the issue. I think they're going to try and use their speed. I think they should take the play right to Erik Karlsson and test his leg and see how he is, because Karlsson's killing him point-wise. Maybe you can get it back on the other end because maybe he can't get back to cover his defensive pairing and his position on the ice. So maybe that's a way they can do it. Anderson, if you get to him early, has been a little shaky. There's no question about that. I think there's something they can do with that. But I worry about these kids in Ottawa. I do. Stone is just starting to come alive. Same with Hoffman. It's hard to believe Boucher is still going with the 1-3-1, and the Rangers really still can't solve it game to game. They've had a couple of games where they've exploited it, but it's still beating them in this series, and that's hard to believe.
It's always dangerous, and some people throw out this term and they believe it or not, but a team of destiny. And the Rangers have been the better team. And I was talking to John Forsland about this, and he said it's a scary thought, though, if you're a Ranger fan, because you've been the better team, but maybe just the way that Ottawa's getting these bounces, like what we saw at the end of Game 5 to tie it up, maybe this Ottawa team is just destined to beat the Rangers, because really, if you look at the stats, everything says that this series should probably already be over, or the Rangers should be going for the series win tonight.
Yeah, no question, but that's not the case, right? So you know you have to win. You know you'll have the home crowd behind you. You know you need to get up early in this game. They need to have a first period like Edmonton had a first period the other day. That's what they need to do. You need to put 2 or 3 on the board to really blow out Ottawa and have them almost put their hands up and say, all right, we're just going to go home and take our chances in Game 7. If they don't do that, the longer that game goes on, whether it's tied or even a goal down for Ottawa, the thought is there that they could still come back and win this series. You've got to take that thought out of their heads early.
Now, since you mentioned Game 7, let's get to the Game 7s tomorrow night. You have Pittsburgh and the Capitals. Who would have thought that the Capitals, with their playoff history, would have made the comeback? And now you have a Game 7 in the nation's capital, and then also with Anaheim and Edmonton. Give me some thoughts on those two games.
Well, the Anaheim-Edmonton's interesting. I do think that the experience factor helps Anaheim a little bit. They are at home. Getzlaf has been a beast, one of the best players in the entire playoffs. I think he at times has owned the Edmonton Oilers. He's killed them in the faceoff dot. He has beaten them down low. If he were to have a hot game, that would go a long way. I think Gibson needs to make a few good saves early to get his head into it. But I fully expect Anaheim to win this, but I think it'll be close. I think Edmonton will do all they can to derail them. The German Gretzky, Leon Draisaitl has been fantastic, and Edmonton really doesn't have an answer for him. But I still think Anaheim will come out of that. Now, the Pittsburgh-Washington one is interesting because, today everybody's talking about Sidney Crosby going into the boards. The interesting thing about it is before you attack the league or the spotters, his shoulder hit first and really hard, and then his head hit a little bit. I don't think the head contact was as much as we've seen Crosby in the past. Still doesn't mean he shouldn't have been looked at and gone to the dark room. I think people have made a bit much out of it, but I do think with Crosby being concussed and having that happen, he's still pretty good on the ice, but he's not Sidney Crosby. So that's definitely leveled the playing field in this series. And Marc-Andre Fleury's play is starting to deteriorate while the Capitals haven't been putting on more pressure. So it's a coin flip. It really is. I'm still going to go with Pittsburgh because someone like Rust or Sheary will probably score a weird goal because that's what's been happening with them the last couple of years. But, it's going to be a great game.
Momentum has shifted, though, when you make this type of comeback and you force a Game 7 when everyone thought you were dead. Let's just say, though, if you're right and Pittsburgh does win, what happens to this Washington team? I know Oshie's a free agent, but this has been a squad now that has won the President's Trophy for the last 2 years, and if they can't punch through this year, it makes you wonder, well, when the heck are they going to be able to punch through?
Well, they won't re-sign Alsner. Oshie won't be back. Shattenkirk won't be back. They'll look to do a few other things in the free agent market. Maybe Verona gets a full-time spot with the team. Maybe even some of the other players, whether it's Riley Barber. They have Madison Bowie, another defenseman. Maybe they're going to get called up, and maybe they'll just make some other changes around that. They've got to do something because they've got to advance. I mean, I give Barry Trotz credit, though. He has gotten it down to the simple point of making sure his guys had fun, and now it does seem like they're playing a lot looser, and that's a big deal.
Wrapping up with Russ Cohen, SiriusXM analyst for NHL Network on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. When myself and Russ aren't having big-time Facebook and Twitter battles about the Patriots and the Jets, we both can relate as being just miserable Met fans. So let me ask you a quick question on the Mets. Just your reaction to what has happened now with the Dark Knight, who's been the farthest thing from that, in Matt Harvey on his, yesterday was his final day of his suspension.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's 31-30 lifetime with the Mets. Like Nino Espinosa has more career wins than Matt Harvey. We all want to elevate Matt Harvey, but Matt Harvey's done a lot to derail his own career. And the interesting thing is, in the next 16 months, he has to do well if he wants to get a big contract, even away from the New York Mets. And so the Mets sort of have him over a barrel, but the Mets also mishandled the situation a little bit. They definitely should have suspended him, but if it were me, I would have just put it out there when it happened, exactly what he did, and nobody would be digging for stories 2 or 3 days later. Now when he makes his start on Friday, it's a huge story where if they would have just put it all out there and let it burn itself out for the news cycle for a couple of days, it would have been dead, but that's not the Mets' way, and they like to hide it. And I think the Mets just keep forgetting, or Jay Horowitz forgets, that the New York media will always get to the bottom of it, and they will always find out the story. Just say what it is. Now, it's Matt Harvey. You know what? Grow up. The guy needs to grow up. He should be ashamed of himself. Pitchers are literally supposed to, the day before, do some film work, go to sleep early, get to the ballpark early. That's what they're supposed to do. We know Felix Hernandez has pushed it playing golf and such, and Harvey has really pushed it over the years, too. And now I think it's gotten to the point where, because he sort of slipped and gotten away with it, now he got to the worst possible scenario where he gets in really late, and can't even get to the ballpark. It's just horrible. You never heard about a pitcher like Tom Seaver not getting to the ballpark or Steve Carlton not getting to the ballpark. That's crazy to me.
I'll be curious to see when he walks in that clubhouse today, if anyone does confront him, because you saw Reyes' comments. And let me just say, Jose Reyes should shut up with talking about team rules because, you punch your wife and you do all that. Come on, that's not the best spokesperson. But I'll be curious to see who in that Mets clubhouse, because Harvey better apologize. Something's got to happen. But really, at the end of the day, his best actions is getting back to a pitcher that actually looks like he could throw a few fastballs and that could actually get you through 6 innings, because we haven't seen that from Matt Harvey in a long time now.
No, we haven't. We've seen a couple of starts this year. That's it. But I would think David Wright, because he is around on home games, is going to have to be the guy. Even though he's not an impact player anymore because he doesn't get to play, he still can impact the team in the locker room. And if I'm David Wright, I'm waiting at his locker.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen, though? Watch, Harvey will try to punch David Wright, and then David Wright will be out longer. Something like that will happen. That's just the Mets' luck, Russ.
There'll be a scuffle. I know. I could see it.
Hey, one more thing, just because I thought you brought an interesting element into this, because you're right. Harvey has to show up, and Harvey just needs to get back to pitching like he's capable of, and that's all I want to hear from Matt Harvey. But you bring up the element the way that the Mets handled it, and I think you hit it the nail right on the head, because they didn't really provide any clarity on this, and I thought it was a joke, Russ, that Sandy Alderson delivers a 20-second statement and then takes no questions. Like, that's a bad look for the Mets GM.
It's a bad look. You can't do that in New York. With the amount of coverage the Mets get, and if they really strive to be a championship team, you can't hide things like that. I don't want to go to the other side and say the Yankees would never do that, but the Yankees would never do that. The Mets should take a cue from that. Unfortunately, Jay Horowitz has been in this job for a very long time, and it's far be it for me to say he shouldn't be in that job anymore. But, there is something to be said about ways to handle situations, and the Mets seem to just work out that playbook from, the 80s.
Russ, one more last thing before we let you run. Let me just bring in the Flyers into the conversation. With Gudas and Giroux in the World Championships, I just couldn't believe that your own player would punch another player. It's ridiculous.
I can, because I've covered Radko Gudas. Radko Gudas just doesn't care. When he's playing for a team, that's his team. He's a guy that plays in the moment. Now, the funny thing about Claude Giroux is I don't think he cares about getting hit in the face either, because he totally gets it. This is the part about being a hockey player that we as regular people or media people don't get.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. Imagine if Giroux got injured. To me, if I'm Ron Hextall, I know he's laughing about it now, but he'd be furious.
Yeah. Oh, it would be bad. I'm sure Ron Hextall would be making a phone call to Gudas, or Gudas might even just get cut because he's not, he doesn't have that big of a contract. But luckily, none of that happened.
And finally, the Flyers and Devils. We know the Devils have the first overall pick. Flyers get the second overall pick. Tell me who we could expect to go 1 and 2 in this year's draft.
I still think Nolan Patrick's going number 1 to the Devils. I think they're just Shiro's pulling a little gamesmanship and seeing if he could pull up some sort of deal. And I think Nico Hischier will go to the Flyers at number 2. I think they both serve a real purpose. I think it's better if Patrick goes to the Devils because he is that big center that, besides being an excellent scorer, can play a heavy game and play a 200-foot game. And who better to teach him than someone like Taylor Hall?
Russ, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, Zach. Thank you.